So I'm a mother, and I'm a writer. I'm a sister. I'm a teacher, an associate professor. I'm also a friend, and to some probably an enemy. I'm an ex, I'm the future, I'm the past, I'm the present. At any given time, I am the main character of my own story. This wasn't always something I realized. I'm here pursuing a creative writing PhD. Now, when I tell people that, they say, "What are you going to do with that?" And I always hear, "How are you going to feed your family with that? How are you going to pay your bills, put a roof over your head?" And that's not even what they mean. I realize that more often than not, the question is, what is creative writing? What do you do? So now I answer that question. I create life. I create stories, possibilities, endings. I'm really enamored with endings. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. That's the version I stick to. I actually wanted to be a French fry. I had short-term goals. Longer term, I wanted to be a writer. But every once in a while, I got scared. How am I going to make a living as a writer? And so I thought, I want to be a psychologist and help people one person at a time. But in the back of my mind, I wanted to be a writer, and yet my first job was picking blueberries. My second was packing blueberries. I needed to revise that. But as a kid, I didn't know how. I was in high school, I was a straight A student, I was college bound. And then my mom decided that she was moving to Germany to follow her opportunities. And that meant that I was graduating early from high school to go to college. One of the first lessons I learned in college was that my full scholarship did not cover room and board. So that meant I had to drop out of college at 17 and move back to New Jersey and work. And work. And work. That's the official story. That's the one I tell my kids. I actually partied a lot and worked, and partied more and worked. And then, amazingly, I got tired of both partying and working. And I decided it was time to move. And I convinced a friend that not only was it time for me to move, but it was time for her to move as well. And she said, "Where?" And I said, "Baltimore." And never did she say, "Why Baltimore?" And if she had, I honestly would have told her that I was reading a lot of fiction at the time. And everything that I read pointed to Baltimore as the place that you had to be. Now, honestly, if she had asked, I would have told her. She never asked. So I convinced her that we should move to Baltimore, and we did. And I thought Baltimore was going to be a great beginning. In the back of my mind, I knew I wanted to go back to college. In the front of my mind, I knew I had bills. So I worked, and I worked, and I worked. And you'll recognize this as a pattern, except this time, it did not include partying. While I was there working, I raised a family. So I was a full-time mom, a full-time employee, and the idea of going back to college just kept getting further and further back. Until one day, I almost forgot about it. And then thankfully, I saw an ad for a bed and breakfast class. And I thought, I always wanted to have a bed and breakfast. I can take a class in this. So I did. The class lasted 3 days. And to my surprise, each time I came back, I had the same amount of kids that I left. Their dad, my then husband, was able to feed them, clothe them, make sure they had done their homework, and basically keep them safe until I got back in the door. As a mom, this was like, wow. So I figured, though, if they can survive while I go to this class, they can survive while I go to college. So I did. I enrolled in a local community college, and I went part-time. I lack patience, so I went full-time. I was a full-time mom, full-time employee, full-time student. I have since taught at that college. But while I was there, I said I need more. So I transferred to the University of Maryland. I now teach there. But anyway, so I was there, and I had already changed my degree to writing. And after that, because there was always an after that, there was always something else I needed to achieve, to attain. I graduated from Johns Hopkins in a program in writing. And still, I had no sense of step after step after step, so how would I know when I was finished? How would I know when I had reached it? It didn't seem to matter then. But during that program, I was fortunate enough to go on a conference, and it was a 9-day intensive conference in Florence. And while I was there, I was working on a novel, which was actually my first novel, though I don't claim it now. That novel had 3 main characters, and they were all in complex relationships that none of them wanted to be in. It was as complicated as it sounds, but it was a thinly veiled version of my life, and I didn't even know it. While I was there, Ed Perlman, one of the lecturers, asked, "Who's the main character, and what does she want?" And I have to say that narrowed it down, because there were 3 main characters, 2 were women, 1 was a guy, so I thought, okay, we're looking at these 2. I had put elements of myself in each of the characters. They all had things that I liked about me and things that made me more villainous, but after a while, I had to recognize myself on the page. And once I did, I was able to claim my story. I realized if I'm the main character, I need to ask myself what I want. As a mom, as an employee, as a student, I often overlooked that I had goals. Not essays, not deadlines, not those sort of goals, but bigger picture goals. There were things that I wanted, and I lost sight of that. So looking at myself on the page, I thought, as a character, I need to want something, and I did. There are supporting characters in my life, and they have goals that are different than mine. How often do I think about that? Never. I also realized that there were conflicts, and that meant there were resolutions. There were beginnings, and that meant there were endings. I was the main character of my story. So from that moment, I started looking at life differently. It helped me to plot my next step, which was pursuing a PhD, which is really just a selfish pursuit of myself and what interests me. It's that opportunity to be Dr. Mom and have my kids forced to call me that. But even bigger than that, it's sharing research. It's defining my life. It's being the main character. So what I'm saying to you, my goal to you would be the main character of your own story. Claim your story before someone else does, and decide that you have goals, you have opportunities, you have conflicts, resolve them. You have beginnings, and there are endings. Claim your own story. Thank you.